Fire Emblem 10, Radiant Dawn, Part 3, Chapter 6 is, in my opinion, by far the worst chapter in all of Fire Emblem. The chapter is not only narratively abysmal, but also an absolute nightmare to play. Part 3, Chapter 6, A Reason to Fight, takes place in this big ugly swamp-looking area during the night. To start, your army is placed on this small little piece of land in the bottom left of the map, and the game gives you one simple task: defeat 46 enemies. Now, if you've ever played a Fire Emblem game before, or some similar war sim type game, your first thought might be, hey, that doesn't sound so bad. Well, get comfortable and allow me to explain just how wrong you are. The story of Radiant Dawn is split between two main characters, Micaiah and Ike. At this point in the game, the story has been following Ike and the Laguz Alliance for some time, but while you've been playing through Ike's story, the game has not slowed down in its scaling. 3.6 is the first chapter since Part 1 to return to the perspective of Micaiah and the Dawn Brigade. That's 11 chapters since you last used these units, and the game is not interested in adjusting to make up for the obvious deficit in the levels of your now severely underleveled units. And if that wasn't already an uphill battle, the enemy forces consist entirely of Laguz opponents, some of the tankiest and hardest hitting enemies in the entire game. For some narrative reason, the game took Big Beefy Torneo away from us, so let's take a quick look at the units that the game has so generously afforded us. We have Micaiah, Sot, Edward, Leonardo, Nolan, Laura, Aran, Meg, Balug, Jill, Zahart, and Fiona. Or, in other words, a team painstakingly crafted out of all the losers who were picked last for kickball. Out of all these gay babies, the only ones who will be able to survive even a single hit are Nolan, Balug, and Soth, assuming you've been feeding him a decent amount of big boy juice. This trinity is the only hope you have, so you better get that asshole nice and loose, cause it's only gonna get more painful from here. Continuing our analysis of the 2016 Suicide Squad, we realize that surviving a single blow is not the only Sisyphean feat ahead of us, because in order to complete our primary directive of defeating 46 enemies, we have to, do damage. Micaiah is likely only powerful enough to do very minor to mediocre damage, but since the game ends if she dies and she's extraordinarily fragile, you're just going to want to stick her in your backline and use her as a heal bot. The same idea goes for Laura, obviously. As for the rest of these buffoons, Edward, Leonardo, Aran, and Fiona are going to be at best cannon fodder here, only capable of hitting for super tiny damage, assuming they're pretty highly leveled, leaving the damage to our aforementioned Holy Trinity alongside Zahart, Jill, and Meg. No, I'm just fucking with you. Don't even bother taking me shield over here. Though, even with our limited units, they will only be helpful if they have enough levels and decently powerful weapons. And even then, with their fragility, you'll only want to employ Zahart and Jill as cleanups, since they can maybe take one blow each. But at least, if we play carefully and tactfully, we can come out of this on top, through strategy and a healthy chunk of luck. What do you mean we're out of resources? That's right, baby. Don't forget, we're at war here. Resources are limited. Don't have enough bonus EXP to artificially juice up your string bean units into Liver King? Well then I sure do hope you don't want to win the video game. Same principle goes for money as well. If you don't have the coin for decent gear, it won't matter how many varicose veins you give your army. And God forbid you had the gall, the arrogance, the absolute chutzpah to lose some of your characters, especially if Nolan, Balug, or Jill has died somewhere down the line. In a pathetic attempt to ease the gap, the game awards powerful new weapons to each of the original Dawn Brigade members. While Tarvos will make Nolan into even more of an asset, Edward and Leo still won't be capable of very much. Now that we finally have an idea of the Herculean disadvantage we're at, let's take a look at the actual map, shall we? It's nighttime, and the darkness heavily restricts the vision of movements of your units. The army starts off on this little island, and the enemy units will approach from above and from the right. Thanks to the darkness, we can't see them, but let me assure you, they can see us. All hope is not lost, however, as the Black Knight will appear on turn 5, and he is more than capable of sweeping up the entire enemy force without breaking a sweat. So that leaves the player with one single task: huddle up all your units in a defensive formation and survive. In what I can only describe as Crying Baby versus Hydrogen Bomb, Our goal is to survive 4 turns of continuous assault until Big Daddy BK comes to save us. Once he arrives, Black Knight can wall off one side, making it still difficult but much more manageable to carefully pick off the enemy forces with your strong units. So hope that Soph is feeling super nimble, throw Meg and Fiona to the literal ravenous animals, and sign that deal with the devil you've been debating on, and you can squeeze out a victory in only about an hour. Unless, of course, you aren't Magnus Carlsen with an AI-controlled butt plug up your ass and you make a mistake somewhere. With the near certainty of making mistakes and many resets, this chapter will likely take you longer than the last 2 or 3 chapters combined. And in Radiant Dawn, where the levels are already abysmally long, that's really saying something. And even with the Black Knight walling off half the enemy forces, it's still possible to goof up a little bit and lose an important unit from a whiffed attack or just a dumb move. My best advice I can give is just to take your time and try not to make any risky plays. The way I ended up beating the map is by having Soph and Valug man the right side of the map, as those forces will reach the main force first, then having Nolan take the top along with the allied NPCs. Of course, poking with my other units where needed and crossing my fingers as the Hark's killing edge hits that critical. Equipping Soph with a Beast Killer knife, or even 2 of them, is a momentous help as it will allow him to one-shot the Cat Lagoos and the Tiger ones as well if he's decently leveled up. Additionally, assuming Jill is alive and decently leveled, she's capable of picking off the Cat Lagoos by herself, the Brave Axe. Now, I was very fortunate that I used very little of my bonus EXP before this point, and I was able to pump up all of my units fairly well before the chapter. And since I play the game like an irrational ape and manically reset whenever I lose a character, I still had all the available units at my disposal, giving me the best possible odds. And even then, it probably took me around 3 hours. Now, I'm sure you could say skill issue and call it a day, and yeah, that's probably fair. But, as someone who has played a huge chunk of the Fire Emblem series, I think me struggling so much is a fair testament to the difficulty of the chapter. I can't even imagine playing this on hard mode. But as I mentioned before, gameplay isn't the chapter's only weak point, because narratively, this chapter absolutely fucking blows as well. Quick story recap for context going forward.
After the Mad King's War from Path of Radiance, the country of Dayan was left in ruin and Micaiah takes up arms to fight against a hostile occupancy from the Holy Empire of Benyan. Having finally gained sovereignty and crowning Prince Peleus as the next king of Dayan in the previous chapter, Dayan's role in the war should be, assumedly, over. Yet, inexplicably, Peleus allies himself with Benyan and orders Micaiah and the Dayan army to strike at the Lagoos alliance in a surprise pincer attack and completely annihilate them. In case you don't know, the Lagoos are people with animal-like characteristics who can shift into powerful animal forms. The Lagoos are heavily discriminated against and are feared by humans. Many Lagoos are even kept as slaves. The nation of Benyan is a theocracy ruled by an apostle who communes with the goddess Asherah. Before the events of the game, the apostle was assassinated by an unknown assailant, spreading chaos throughout Benyan. The assassination was blamed on the Heron clan of Lagoos who inhabited the nearby Serene's forest. It's common knowledge that the Herons are peaceful people and are extremely frail, but fueled by the power of racism and grief from the death of the apostle, the people of Benyan attacked the Serene's forest. The fragile Herons had no means to defend themselves, and the holy forest was burnt to ash and the Herons were massacred. The prequel to Radiant Dawn, Path of Radiance, the rumor that the Herons were responsible for the assassination was attributed to King Ashnard and his plan to start a war. But now, it's revealed that the massacre of the Herons was actually planned by the Benyan senators. Due to their beauty, the Heron clan are extremely valuable slaves, and culling their numbers would skyrocket the value of any survivors. Additionally, the event significantly raised tension between humans and Lagoons, and the death of the apostle allowed the Senate to gain influence in her absence. 23 years after the Serene's massacre, Radiant Dawn takes place, and the Lagoos learn about the truth behind the genocide of the Herons from the long-thought-dead Heron Prince Raphael, who was captured and sold into slavery during the attack. This revelation causes the Lagoos nations of Gallia, Phoenicus, and Killas to form an Lagoos alliance and declare war on Benyan.
All that to say, since the Dayan had just won their own battle against Benyan and won their sovereignty, and since the Lagoos alliance is clearly justified in fighting against their persecution, Dayan had no reason to intervene in the war between the Alliance and Benyan, much less in support of Benyan. Now, the point of this chapter narratively is to show that Micaiah and the Dayan army are clearly in the wrong and are just refusing to acknowledge it, and it serves that function well enough, but logically, it just doesn't make any sense. First off, we need to keep in mind that at the time of this chapter, Micaiah and the Dayan army have no knowledge of the blood contract that's binding Peleus to Bainon's will. So, the reason that Micaiah and the others choose to go through with the attack anyways is because they believe in Peleus and want to have faith in him. Listen, I like Peleus too, and it's a nice sentiment, but I'm not willing to believe that all of these characters are willing to commit fucking ethnic cleansing for the power of friendship. Micaiah and the Dawn Brigade are literal freedom fighters who fought against oppression in Dayan, and Micaiah and Sotha acknowledge that they know what they're doing is wrong, yet they do it anyway. To me, this feels so disgustingly out of character. Well, except for fucking Edward over here, I guess. This dude does not give a fuck. He's raring to go. Point is, I don't care what the game says. I don't believe that Micaiah would go along with this, especially when Peleus is unwilling to even offer an explanation. And worse than this, other characters outside of Micaiah make even less sense to participate. Now, a fair amount of these units are simply loyal to Micaiah, so them following her decision makes sense, just assuming she has a rational reason behind her actions. But not Jill, Zahark, and Balug. Jill's entire character arc in the first game is overcoming her sheltered nature and bigoted worldview she grew up with, and learning to accept the Laguz and fight alongside them. Additionally, fighting in the Mad King's War and Path of Radiance allied her with the Grail mercenaries, and many of the very Laguz that they are launching an attack on. Why the fuck is she so willing to just throw away all of her values and attack her friends? She's willing to fight for Micaiah, who she just met, even if it means murdering her friends Mordecai, Laith, Ranulf, Janaf, Olki, and Tabarn, and fighting against Ike and the others? I don't buy it. All of the previous reasons apply to Zahark as well, but tenfold. Zahark's entire character is fighting to protect the Laguz people. He fell in love with a Laguz woman, but wasn't able to be with her due to severe pressure from both societies. Now, he takes up the sword to fight for the Laguz cause in her honor. Zahark was so deeply in love with this woman that he tells Moiraine that he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to love another person as he still loves her so many years later. You're telling me this guy, of all people, is willing to participate in this attack? Bull fucking shit. And yes, I know that he will join the enemy if he encounters Laith or Mordecai during this chapter, but I refuse to believe he'd participate in the first place. Fuck. It'd make infinitely more sense if Zahark fled to join the Laguz army and warn them of the attack as soon as he learned the plan. And well, the Luke is obvious. I mean, I know he's been tasked with defending Micaiah by Queen Nyla, so he's loyal to Micaiah's cause. And, I mean, damn. I get it. She could order me around too. But he's literally Laguz. I'd like to think Bro would have a little bit of self-respect. So, briefly, just from a game design perspective, why even include Mordecai and Laith in this chapter? They're all the way up here, and realistically, there's no fucking way to get up there to interact with them. I guess it's a neat little hidden thing for that 0.1% of players who are unkillable fucking monsters and have optimized the game to a science, but the remaining 99% of players will never even encounter them. Hell, if it wasn't for this opening dialogue, you wouldn't even know Laith was there. What's the point of even adding them in? And that is why A Recent Fight is by far the worst chapter in the entire Fire Emblem franchise. That, and also, fuck you, it was hard and it took me a long time. But hey, feel free to tell me why I'm wrong and I'm actually brain dead and you beat it in one try in the comments, and tell me what you think the worst chapter in Fire Emblem history is. Hey there, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more epic gaming and hyper-specific rants that nobody cares about.